We live in a world where we're now living longer than we ever have before. We live in a world where there are now more resources to live on or to live with than ever in history, especially in our context. We live at a time when most of us live in climate-controlled spaces with at least one car, with at least one television, with at least one computer. We can speak with others across the world. We can find information out with a tap of a few buttons or by speaking a sentence that says or begins with, "Hey Siri." We can send and receive money from almost anywhere on the globe. Or we can purchase just about anything we want from our favourite chair in our lounge room. Now, we don't live in a perfect world, but we do live, as far as most people measure things anyway, we do live in the best world that has ever existed. So why, as a society, are we so sad? Why, as a society, are we so demoralised, so anxious, so depressed? Now, more people seek medical help for mental health than they do for the flu. Why are our young adults, and particularly our men, ending their own lives at the highest rate of anywhere in the world? We're spending our money on things, but we're enjoying them less. We're going on more expensive holidays, and yet we feel more burnt out than ever. I've said it before, when you make a God thing out of a good thing, then the good thing becomes a bad thing. When we look for hope and we look for help, and when we look for peace and we look for love in things that cannot deliver lasting hope or help or peace or love, then we either, or we inevitably invest more in those things, or we need a bigger hit from whatever we get a kick from out of those things, or we just give up. See, when we look for things in other than God, in what only God can provide, it will eventually leave us unsatisfied. And society continually proves that to be right. But there's good news for us today, because there is hope, because there is help, because there is peace and there is love and there is satisfaction, because there is a God who made us, and there is a God who knows us, and there is a God who loves us, and the God who made us, and the God who knows us, and the God who loves us is also the God who wants us. But you see, that's why we need Christmas. The next few weeks, we'll be going through the passage that Hannah just read to us from John chapter 1, sentences 1 through 16. And as we go through this part of the Bible over the next few weeks, I hope we get the significance of Christmas, of this season. Today we're looking at John chapter 1 and sentences 1 through 5. See, the amazing thing and the amazing confession that the Bible itself makes of itself, And also that we as followers of Jesus here also agree with is this. When it comes to Christmas, when it comes to the birth of Jesus, the Bible itself says, and we would also say here at the Refuge, that if it didn't happen, then it doesn't matter. If it didn't happen, then it doesn't matter. But if it did happen, then nothing matters more. And you think about that. If it didn't happen, it doesn't matter. But if it did happen, and if what we believe about what happened when it did happen, happened, then surely you could appreciate that nothing in your life and nothing in my life can matter more than that. If God didn't take on flesh, if God didn't come as a baby, if God didn't get placed in a manger, and if God didn't walk on earth as a man, then just dismiss it. Forget it. It doesn't matter. But if God did take on flesh, and if God was born of a virgin, and if God did get put in a manger, and if God did walk on earth, and if he did heal diseases, and if he did die on a cross, and if he did rise from the dead, then nothing is more important than that. Nothing is more important than that. And John begins at the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. And they're amazing words, and they're well known to many of us, but they're amazing words, and the words could possibly amaze us today because they're different words than we live our lives. And what I mean by that is this: everything about our lives are linear. Everything about our lives are from A to B. Everything about our lives is from a beginning to an end, and that's what we're used to. That's how we live. That's how we function. A movie has a beginning and it has an ending. A special day or a holiday has a beginning and an ending. A school year has a beginning and an ending. Everything has a beginning and everything has an ending. And so it makes sense for us just to think through life and everything about life as this construct that has a beginning and has an ending, except this verse, this part of the Bible, it says that everything has a beginning except Jesus, except God. Jesus is eternal. There was never a time when he was not. And I tell you, that's good news for us who live in a linear world. It's good news because it means that whatever is the best of our lives or whatever is the worst of our days, he, Jesus, is before the beginning. And he, Jesus, is after the end. John begins by calling him the Word. In the beginning was the Word. And he uses a word for the word that is amazing for those who would be reading what he has to say. He uses the word logos. Now, see if you can just sort of understand what I'm about to talk about. There are 4 biographies or 4 gospels about Jesus in our Bibles. The whole Bible is about Jesus, but that's a story for another day. Matthew is written to convince the religious Jews. Mark is written to convince the ruling Romans. Luke is written to convince the pagan Gentiles. And John is written to convince the philosophical Greeks that Jesus is the promised Messiah. And straight away, as he begins, he gets his readers' attention, and he would have got their attention with what he wrote here. John describes Jesus as the Word, the logos, from which we get the word logic or logical. In other words, he says to them, hey, you guys who spend your time discussing and debating and philosophizing about the meaning of life, you're searching for the logos, for the logic of everything. You're searching for the divine logos, the divine logic of everything. And all the time, Jesus is the only one who makes sense of everything, because he is the Word, because he is the logic, because he is the logos. He is the source of everything. In other words, he's the logic behind everything. And John tells us why. Because he is with God. Because he is God. Because he is before the beginning. And because he is after the end. And that's great. Because that means that Jesus, right now, is both eternal and also accessible. It's incredible. Jesus, right now, is both transcendent, but there was a time when he was touchable. He's heavenly, but he's also here. He's perfect, but he's also present. But John goes on, doesn't he? Have a look at 3 with me. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. I spent a few days a week working in this school, and they're cleaning up rooms at the moment, and so I'm helping students and teachers in some of the classrooms I go into, pulling down artwork and different things from the wall. And in one particular Year 5 class just over there, they had all this Indigenous art on the wall and posters, and one of the posters, or one of the series of posters, was a poster celebrating Indigenous celebrities. So different famous people. Adam Goodes was there. Others. And this kid in Year 5 did a poster. Christina Anu, is that her name? Christina Anu? Christine or Christina? Christine Anu. A singer. Famous in Australian Idol or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But it had a poster. Anyway, according to the poster, she was born in the year 1970. Same year I was born. And on this poster, this Year 5 kid had put her name, year of birth, 1970, and then in brackets, and is still alive. As if it's some kind of miraculous achievement. It could well be. John is saying of Jesus here that life is through him. Everything that there is through him. So get what that means for us today. Life and breath is through him. The cosmos is through him. The exactness or the fine-tuning of life through him. The telescopic magnitude of space through him. The microscopic magnificence of biology through him. The vast colours of flowers through him. The wonderful taste of food through him. The variety of the animal kingdom through him. The amazing inventiveness that we see around us because of the things we've been able to learn. It's all through him. The constant discoveries of the new things that are out there, it's all through him. Through him all things were made. And therefore it's logical, it's logos. It makes sense that nothing that has been made would have been made if it wasn't for him. The fact that all you enjoy, the fact that all that we know and all that we discover and all that we learn and all that we wonder at in this world the fact of those things should make us thank Jesus. Because it's all through him. And it should make us worship Jesus because it's all through him. But the real wonder of Christmas is that baby born, that baby placed in a manger, he is the reason why we can live and breathe and enjoy being alive. But John goes on because he's creator. And because he's creator, it makes sense that John goes on to tell us in sentence 4 that he is life. Look at 4. In him was life, and that life was the light to all humankind. Jesus himself would later say in John chapter 14, verse 6, he'd say, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And what's amazing about what he says there in John chapter 14:6 is what he doesn't say in John 14:6. He doesn't say that he is a way. He doesn't say that he is a truth. He doesn't say that he is a life. No, he says, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. He is the word. He is the logos. He is the creator. And he is also the life. In other words, a life without Jesus is incomplete. Hey, if it's not true, then dismiss it. But if it is true, then nothing matters more. And living without Jesus is actually incomprehensible. It's still living in the dark. And that's why John goes on to say that the one who is the life is also the one who is the light. And that life was the light of all mankind or humankind. You see, all of us here today, there's a sense in which we're encouraged to think all you need in life is a realignment. The Bible doesn't say you need a realignment or I need a realignment. The Bible says we need re-enlightenment. We like to think that the old days, they were the dark days. But for too many people, we're still in the dark ages. But it's in the darkness that light shines. Think of the value of light to your world. Think of your dependence upon light. You know, when we ignore it, when we take it for granted and all of a sudden it's no longer available, and we realise just how much we needed it, how much we're used to it, how much we depend upon it. Early this week, there was that huge storm in Appin, mini tornado they were calling it. And all this power went off. And Donna, the principal here, she lives down in Appin. She's married to Damien. And those of us who have been at the Refuge long enough know that Damien, Donna's husband, has had really significant health issues in his life. He's had massive operations and he's still very, very unwell. And she was telling me that he's at home. The carer in the home had already left for the day. The storm hit. She was on her way home. She didn't get home from here to Appin until 10 o'clock that evening. But the power went off. He was in his recliner, fully reclined in the recliner. And the air conditioning went off and the power went off and he was stuck. And thankfully the neighbours jumped the fence and came in and helped him after a while. But she told me these words. She said, in all that he's been through, and he's had significant operations, life-saving operations. She said, in all that he's been through, the storm, that storm was when he felt most vulnerable. See, light. We're so used to it that we take it for granted. When it's not there, we think how much we depend on it. I mean, it's a thing. Yes, think about scary movies, horror movies. There's a reason why they're set in the the middle of the night. The middle of the night is scary. It wouldn't make sense to have a horror movie set at midday. Because without light, we are vulnerable. We all know what it is to be in the dark and to be scared. When he was there at creation, he spoke. His words were heard, and he spoke life. And if you remember what he spoke at creation, he said words, and the words he spoke were, "Let there be light." And the one who is the light said, "Let what is glorious in me shine. Let what I have emanate and resonate and reverberate out into all." So now, even today, even right now, for you and for me, for anyone who would choose to hear and for those who would be willing to see, we could say, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim his name. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they declare how great is our God. Yes, in these few words we have a great account of the power and the importance of the greatness and the grace and the glory and the goodness of Jesus, who is the Messiah. But John doesn't stop there, because he goes in 5. Have a look at sentence 5. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That is amazing. That is awesome. And it's such an encouragement. And I'll tell you why. Because it shines throughout history. Because it shines in his people, and it shines through his people. His light shines through people to reflect his light to shine in the darkness of others. 90% of the world that you live in right now doesn't have a whole copy of the Bible. 90% of the world you live in doesn't have a whole copy of the Bible. 90% of the world we live in doesn't have access to someone who would tell them about Jesus. 90%. Listen, for most of the people on the planet right now, it's not that they have heard the gospel and they have rejected it. It's that they haven't heard the gospel in the first place. A lot of people, they talk to me all the time, they want to hear about the second coming, when the reality is most of the planet hasn't heard about the first coming yet. And that's why we're so passionate at the Refuge about world mission. And that's why we're so eager that the whole world would hear about Jesus. And that's why our confidence when we do that is this. It's the fact of what we've already heard. It's in the fact that if it isn't true, then it doesn't matter. But if it is true, then nothing matters more. But it's also this. This is our confidence. That in all history and in all the future, until Jesus does come back again, in the best times and yes, even in the worst times, this is our promise. This is the confidence we have as Christians. So if you're a Christian, then hear this. And if you're not yet a follower of Jesus, then hear this. These amazing words about this amazing account and this incredible person. Those words that say the darkness has not overcome it. In all of history, in all that has happened in history, the darkness has not overcome it. In all that has happened in your life, in the best and in the worst that has happened in your life, the darkness has not overcome it. And in anything that will happen in the future, the darkness has not overcome it. The darkness cannot account for the light, and the darkness has no answer to the light, and the darkness cannot comprehend the light. The darkness cannot outlast, withstand, or coexist with the light. We need this light. And my goodness, we want this light. Why? Because this light shines. It always has. And it always will. This light shines. And our wish is that someone would come and shine in our world and act as a beacon in our lives and overcome the darkness of shame, or the darkness of guilt, the darkness of sorrow or grief, the darkness of regret or anguish, the darkness of dysfunction or terror or horror. And that's what happened at that first Christmas. And that is what can happen in our lives and in the lives of all people this Christmas. Through him, all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all humankind. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.